I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. And as is always the plan, joined now by San Antonio Express News courts reporter Elizabeth Zavala. Great to talk with you, Liz.
Great to be back with you, Chance.
Yeah, back with me. That's a great way to start the discussion today, because we're back talking about something we've already discussed here on the podcast. You have quite an update, so let's get to it. Timothy and Charlotte Mott, they're still searching for their daughter 3 years after her death. That sounds probably odd, and it is a very strange situation. In a mystery that haunts the Motts, the body of their daughter Julie disappeared from a local funeral home and has yet to be found. Julie died of cystic fibrosis in 2015 and was supposed to be cremated, with her ashes distributed to several places, including an urn in the Mott's home. The couple won a lawsuit against Mission Park North Funeral Chapel, but to the family, of course, that was no victory because the case failed to provide the answers the Motts needed. So, still grieving, they search for their lost daughter in the hope of fulfilling her final wishes. As I just mentioned, Elizabeth, we have discussed this case quite a lot over, I think, a couple different episodes sometime back. But you recently spoke to the Mott family.
Yes, I did, Chance, and I'm eternally grateful for them for opening up their home to me and sharing such, personal, raw feelings regarding the disappearance of their only daughter. This is still very fresh to them, and August is a really tough month because it's the month that Julie Mott was born. On August 15th. It's also the month she died. She died on August 8th of 2015 at 25 years old. And as I said, she had a birthday on August 15th, and this year she would have been 29. So just to kind of update you and our listeners about this, she had cystic fibrosis from the time she was 2 years old, and the family knew that she was likely going to pass away at a young age. So her wish was to be cremated after her death, and they had a funeral and a memorial on August 15th. And then sometime between August 15th and the 16th, her body disappeared from a damaged casket at Mission Park North on Cherry Ridge here in San Antonio. So, how this whole thing happened, how the family found out about it was that the morning of the 16th, Charlotte Mott, Julie's mother, called the funeral home to retrieve Julie's jewelry and other personal items that the family had wanted back. And around the same time, that she called that morning, employees were already, frantically searching for Julie's body because the first employee who came in that morning came in, the doors were still locked, the alarm was on, and there was a chain on the back door, and the first employee who came in found that the body was missing. So, this was a big thing in the community. There were searches that occurred, and this story went national because, the Texas Funeral Commission tells me that it's extremely rare for bodies to, end up disappearing from funeral homes. And so it was something that a lot of people locally read, and of course nationally, this was covered by national media. So after several months, actually after 2 years, the Motts filed a lawsuit against MPII Inc., which does business in San Antonio and surrounding areas as Mission Park Funeral Chapels and Cemeteries. and they accused them of negligence and said that they were responsible for the loss of the body, that they did not maintain care, custody, and control. So that's, a little bit of an update on the case itself.
And so we'll get to perhaps a little bit more of the details that we've talked about before here on the podcast as this story unfolds. But tell me about some of the conversations that you had with the family.
Boy, it was a very, very nice day. I actually saw them. Of course, I say nice day, but Texans, August is really hot. But it was a beautiful sunny day. It was August 15th when I visited with Timothy and Charlotte at their home on the far west side of San Antonio. And they have a lovely home that has a lovely view. And we talked about, how they're doing. It's always difficult to, in these tragic situations to ask relatives, I try not to ask, how do you feel about this? I mostly wanted to know what their new normal was like. And the best way that Timothy Mott described it was, he said he felt that they have been on this merry-go-round that they just can't get off of, or that just won't stop. Charlotte says she cries quite easily all the time. And she said that, they have a lot of sadness in the fact that they just really don't know where she is. And they feel like nothing has changed. Timothy Mott does something really, really lovely. And actually he and Charlotte do this. They have a really large backyard, and they moved in about 2 months after Julie died because the house was under construction, and they had taken a lot of care in wanting to build, an upstairs master bedroom so that she could have lots of room, to move about, because, she spent some time being sick. So, they wanted her to have a spot that where she could have a lot of space. And, which her mother, Charlotte, said, at times there would be sleepovers with Julie and her friends and that sort of thing. So, but one of the stories that really stuck out to me during the trial that happened in January of this year in Civil District Court here in Bexar County is that Timothy Mott sits outside each day waiting for a redbird and hoping that the cardinal that he sees in his backyard is like a nod or a wink from Julie. Because after they moved in, a relative told them, when a cardinal appears in your yard, it's a visitor from heaven. So they spend a lot of time back there, because Timothy said that they can at times spot at least 6 cardinals daily in their yard. And if they're there in the morning, they say, "Good morning, Julie," to her. And, they spoke very proudly of their daughter, referring to her as tiny but tough, and talked about the things that she loved, being outside, being with her friends and with family. And she loved horses. And apparently she competed in some equestrian events in her healthier and younger years, her father said. But, it's like in an instant, their moods can change to despair. And, chances their grief is that fresh. It's like everything just happened for them. And Charlotte shared a story that was very, very poignant. Whenever she would take Julie to doctor's appointments or wherever they went, Julie kept a jacket in her mom's car that Charlotte Mott now keeps draped over the passenger seat of her car. And when she drives, Charlotte Mott clutches the sleeve of that jacket. And she said that it's, the jacket stays with her all the time. So, they are still very much in the grieving process. And Some of the things that we heard during the trial when psychologists testified is that, this part of the grieving process is really hard. And, during the trial, Charlotte Mott described it almost like it's almost like her daughter was kidnapped in a way. There's no closure here. They have absolutely no closure.
You're listening to The Docket, a new weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com, brought to you by our sponsor, the law offices of Pat Maloney. If memory serves, that $8 million judgment from the trial that we discussed here on the podcast some time ago, that included, I believe, some money for counseling for family members, as this is something they're still dealing with. They're still grieving. As you mentioned, it feels sort of like their daughter was kidnapped. As we've already discussed the trial previously, I'm interested if there's any new developments in this case. I believe that there's an appeals process going on, correct?
Well, yes, there's a couple of things. Well, first of all, the Motts have been in contact with San Antonio police on and off. And in speaking with San Antonio police, we've learned that there is a new development in the case. I heard from Lieutenant Jesse Salome, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for San Antonio Police Chief William McManus, that they have recently discovered new information that they're actively pursuing in the hopes that it leads to where Julie's body is. But, as is normal in these situations, because it's an open investigation, that's pretty much all they would share with me, because they don't want to jeopardize the case. They didn't want to reveal any other details other than there is still, something there that they're chasing. So that is good news. And part of this lawsuit was that Dick Tips, who is the owner of MPII, again, which does business as Mission Park Funeral Chapels and Cemeteries, and his wife, Kristen, who is the company president, strongly believe that Julie's ex-boyfriend, Bill Wilburn, took her body because he did not want for her to be cremated. Now, Bill Wilburn has not been charged with anything to do with taking Julie's body. However, in March of this year, he did plead guilty to trespassing, and I believe he got 2 days in jail. And the trespassing charge has to do with Bill Wilburn being spotted by Mission Park security cameras on 2 occasions after Julie's disappearance. We're talking a year after her disappearance. On 2 occasions, he was spotted by cameras trying to get inside the facility and reportedly called staff there 200 times in one day trying to find information about the case. So he did plead guilty to the charges of criminal trespass, and he was sentenced to 2 days in jail. But that's the extent of it. So the Tipses believe that he had motive to take the body, but the Motts do not believe that, and apparently neither did the jury, because, Chance, they specifically asked the jury to consider whether they felt Bill Wilburn or an unknown third party took the body. And they answered no to both of those questions as they were deciding on the judgment. So, and, in talking with one of the attorneys who represented the Motts, basically Mark Greenwald, who argued this case along with attorneys Alex Katzman and Ron Salazar, said, they asked the question, where's the body? The jury obviously didn't think someone else did it. So, one of the things that Mark had said that was very personal for me, was that it was very personal for him and for the other two attorneys as well, because they have, children that are the age that Julie Mott was when she disappeared. So, they're sticking with the case, and it's also, it's going through the appeals process. And in fact, speaking about that, the company has posted a $9.2 million surety bond to cover the cost of the money judgment to stay it during the appeals process. But, Chance, this could go all the way to the Texas Supreme Court, and it could take years to settle.
Yeah, you hate to ever be against, letting people have an appeals process and, letting the legal process play out, innocent until proven guilty. But that's got to be really hard for someone in the Mott's position to have gone through all this, won the judgment. They still don't know where their daughter's body is. And then sort of having to continue that through an appeals process. I'm sure that's not easy for them.
Yeah, it's not easy. I also try, Julie Mott has an older brother. His name is Jonathan. He's 5 years older than Julie, who would have been 29. So he's in his 30s, but he misses his sister so much that he won't talk about her. And he declined to be interviewed for the story that I wrote for the newspaper. But he maintains a public Facebook page to memorialize his sister. And probably one of the most, fascinating things, I'm trying to find the right word for this, but, whether it's through grace or fate, Jonathan has a little girl by the name of Olivia Nicole Mott. She is 14 months old, and her middle name is the same as Julie's. So she shares her aunt's middle name, but what's really amazing and uncanny is that when Charlotte Mott, this child is the bright spot in the lives of Timothy and Charlotte Mott. When Charlotte Mott brought me a framed photograph, it was a photograph of Olivia on top of a photograph of Julie at the same age as Olivia. And my gosh, they could be the same person. There are so many similarities, and even Timothy Mott said, there were so many similarities. So, I think that it's good that for them that they are able to spend time with their grandchild. Tim and Charlotte were saying that they don't live very far from Jonathan and his wife, so they get to spend time with their grandchild. And for Charlotte, when she wants to be alone with Julie, she goes to the room where the room that Charlotte had set up for her, that they built for her upstairs. And she said that, when she wants to just feel Julie's presence, she'll go there. And she said that this summer she tried to empty out the closet, but she just couldn't do it. And then, of course, the other place where they like to go is, to the backyard, so that they can see the redbirds. And as you walk through their house and you go to the backyard, toward the backyard, you can see they have these framed photographs that have that saying that I mentioned earlier about every time you see a redbird, it's one of your dearly departed. And Timothy said that sometimes they'll sleep out there, and they hope to get a glimpse of a redbird. But mostly he says that, they think about everything that they've gone through with this. And he said that they hope that they find her. He says that this is a constant hope that they have, that she'll be found. But unfortunately, I think they doubt that might happen. But we'll see. We'll be checking with San Antonio police to see what they can find out with this new development. And, hopefully there will be, some sort of closure for Timothy and Charlotte and Jonathan Mott.
And if there is an update, of course, we'll be discussing it right here on a future episode of the Docket Podcast. So as always, thank you to San Antonio Express News courts reporter Elizabeth Zavala, usually talking about things she's seen and heard in the courtroom today. Something a little bit more special, but of course, really connected to all of our discussions in previous episodes about this case. So good work, Elizabeth, and have a great week. We'll talk to you here in about another 7 days.
Thanks so much, Chance. You take care.
And thanks to San Antonio Express News courts reporter Elizabeth Zavala for stepping out of her normal courtroom reporting duties and doing some really good reporting for the San Antonio Express News and talking about it on today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.